declare this August 8th, 2023 regular session meeting to order. Ms. Dance, we have all board members present. We'll begin the night first with an invocation by Mike Wooten and the Pledge of Allegiance by Kay Carroll.
Dear God, and I just pray that everything we do today be pleasing in your eyes. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank y'all. I'll now entertain a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Chair, I move that the board meeting closed session pursuant to NC General Statute 143-318.11 A1, 3, 5, and 6 to prevent the disclosure of confidential personal information under General Statute 115C-321 to consider matters relating to initial employment of an individual employee and to consult with the board's attorney in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege of confidential information and to consider the handling of the following cases.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second? Yes. I have a second from Mr. Carroll. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? 7-0. Thank you. We'll now go into closed session. Back to our August 8th, 2023 board meeting. We have already done our invocation and our pledge and have been in closed session, and we will move forward with our regular session meeting. The first would be I'm going to go to the adjustment to the agenda first before the approval of minutes, because I want to we need to add something to our minutes. You could do it right. Yeah, go ahead.
Madam Chair, if I could remove from the consent items number 10 and number 17, number 10 being the district-wide ADA improvement, and number 17, the Cleveland High track resurface and change order. If you take those two items, 10 and 17 again, move them to section C and for discussion, and they would be items 1 and 2 under section C.
Make items 3 and 4, maybe? Let's see. C1 is addition. You want me to go ahead? You want to make make it a 3 and 4?
I apologize, 3 and 4 snuck up on me on the next page.
So that would be number 10, ADA improvements would be number 3. And the Cleveland High Track would be C4. Is that okay, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Mr. Carroll?
Madam Chairman, somehow or another, it left off our agenda that the closed session minutes for approval for, add it to, closed session that we will have after this, public meeting and will be approved afterward. October 25th of 22, May 9th of 23, May 30th of 23, June 5th of 23. Add that to our agenda.
Okay, and we will vote on those closed session. We will go back into closed session after we finish this regular meeting because we didn't finish closed session. We will review those minutes in our next closed session and vote on those after we come out of closed session. We just want to make sure those are on the agenda. Mr. Donovan.
No changes.
Mr. Tippett. Mr. Wooten. Ms. Anton.
May we move board policy under the consent agenda 5 and 6, possibly under, there's really not a good place for it, but maybe under the chief academic officer, if you have a better spot for that? Is he adding
I don't know.
I'd just like them actually discussed in open session, the policy that we're having a second reading on. One on second, one's first, one's second, correct. I believe they should both be out in the public. I don't think it should just be a consent item that's passed over. I think any policy that we're passing needs to go before the public. That's what our policy states it should happen, and I just think that it shouldn't just be passed over on a consent agenda. I'd like to see it in the open session discussion. So I don't know if we need to put Dr. Pierce on the agenda for that. He is here tonight.
Would there be any issue, Ms. Cornetto, with putting him under the chief academic officer and just letting him roll there?
I was just going to suggest E, but either way is fine.
Yeah, it would be E1 and 2.
So, board policy second read is E1. Board policy first read is E2. Any other additions? Okay, we will vote on this for these amendments to the adjustments to our agenda. Everybody clear on what we've done?
We have discussion first.
You can. I need a motion and a second first. Okay, do I have a motion?
So moved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Johnson. Okay, any discussion?
Okay, I'm not gonna agree to remove all board policies. I think that's the purpose of your policy committee. There's a procedure for doing that. If there's a specific policy that there is a question about, the policies for first read are gonna be here for another month. And if anyone has any board member, anyone on the committee, or any public, from the public has any issues, those can be submitted. So I'm not gonna support putting any, first read out of the consent items. Second read, you've had 60 days. Now, and I think, Ms. Antoine, you had some, questions about some policies. And those policies and those questions were looked at by the committee. They were looked at, by our legal team. And those are the proposals. I mean, we're not gonna have, a policy committee meeting, for that. I mean, that's not the process that we should be doing.
Any other discussion?
Briefly, in the spirit of decorum and just kind of moving forward, I mean, we could just read the policies and have discussion. I don't think that that's going to hurt anything. I mean, and then we present it to the public, they get to hear it, and, obviously they could come to the policy committee meetings. I get that, Mr. Tippett. I just think it would be, more than optimal just to have them read here. I don't think that's going to hurt anything. I think you would agree with that.
I think we do all new policies, most definitely, if we're developing new policies. But if the policy is for technical changes, if the policy is amendment without changing content of policies, those are what I'm talking about. I mean, there's no, that they've been there. Now, certainly, the policy that's on for first read, if you've looked at that, it states that when you develop new policies, those will come and will be discussed openly.
We're talking about a policy about a policy.
A policy about a policy. The policy for making policies.
Kind of like Allen Iverson in practice.
Right,
Go
right.
ahead.
But that's where we're, and those certainly will come before and we get open input from the board on developing new policies, which we will be developing new policies. But what I'm referring to is policies that are already in existence that are being changed with minor changes. I personally don't see the point in doing that.
Any other discussion?
So inside the policy, it requires that we have an open forum for discussion on any policies that we amend or make. And it states that the public should have input into those policies. I think it needs to be open to the public. This is how we run our school district based on these policies and regulations. And I think that the public needs an open forum to have it read to them. I mean, it's called a reading for a reason. And then have input into any policy that this board should pass. Secondarily, I would call on the parliamentarian who is our attorney, to remind us that the consent agenda, if someone requests something to be removed from the consent agenda, it's not up for debate. That is my understanding of how that works. It's just simply the consent agenda is a process for moving things forward that there really isn't needed discussion on, and I believe that policy is something that we should be discussing. So maybe if you could clarify for us.
What's before the board right now is the motion and the second to amend the agenda and approve it as amended. But to your point, the consent items that are requested to be removed should be taken off the consent agenda to be able to have the board fully discuss and vote.
Thank you for that.
Okay, any other discussion?
No, I think here's the thing. These policies under consent agenda, they're made to the public. They're publicly available. I think the reason why we have subcommittees and the reason for subcommittees is just to save the people's time from sitting in here listening to every single policy. Every person in this county has the ability to read these policies and submit requests to make changes. It's there. So are we willing to waste the public's time to sit and read every single policy that we're going to amend? Are you cool with that?
I think we're supposed to either approve the agenda or not approve the agenda.
Any other discussion? Okay, the vote before us is to adjust the agenda based on the corrections or the things that have been stated. 4 things moved out of consent agenda, and then adding of 4 closed session minutes to be reviewed in our next closed session. So all those in favor of these adjustments to the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
6-1. 5-2, I'm sorry. Okay, let's move to the approval of the minutes that we have privy to. The first minutes to approve are June 13th, 2023, regular session. I will entertain a motion to approve those minutes. Motion by Mr. Carroll, second by, I need a second,
Second.
Mr. Wooten. Any discussion?
Are we approving all the minutes at once, or are we doing just?
I do them individually.
And we're going on the June, are you going on the June
June
13th?
13th.
I did have a question on those. And I apologize, because I don't have them printed off, so it makes it more difficult.
June 13th is where we went back and approved special session minutes from May 9th, May 10th, May 30th, June 5th. Is that correct, Ms. Cornetta? Yes. Okay.
Right, and in there, in that, I'm sorry, I'm trying to scroll through and find that. In that, it talks about the passage of the closed session minutes, and it says that it was, sorry, there's a lot to these minutes.
So while she's looking in section F, it has the 12:21 to 10:22, and I believe that Mr. Carroll excused Mr. Donovan, Mr. Tippett, Ms. Antoine from making a vote on those specific ones because they were not on the board at that time. Correct, Ms. Cornetta?
That's correct.
And I think the question, and right now it would be purely a question, whenever we have a group of 7 and you do recuse 3 board members, do you still need a 7 majority? Would you need 4, or could you do it with the 3-1 like was done, or does parliamentary procedure dictate different?
With a 3-1, because the board voted to excuse those members who are not yet seated on the board to be able to not vote because they couldn't substantively report and approve what was in the minutes.
When I looked through policy, it said that the quorum stands. Even if there's a recusal, that the quorum still stands.
So you're saying essentially that the minutes could never be adopted,
Unless you had 4 voting members voting on it.
but we had the board majority vote to excuse 3 members who were not seated.
Correct, you had 4 members to vote on it. The policy is that the quorum is the 7. It is not, if someone recused themselves, the quorum didn't change.
So absent 4 people voting, according to what you're saying, then no action can be taken.
I don't understand how, if you were not at the meeting, how you can approve meetings that minutes you were not a part of. So it would stand to reason that the remaining members that were present would constitute the quorum.
That's not how the policy is written. The policy, when I've looked through it inside of our policy, stands that the quorumed amount of people is what the vote has to stand to.
So if Ms. Antoine, myself, and Mr. Donovan were not in the room, would you still have quorum?
I think I heard a request to suspend the policy. I'm sorry, what was your question?
If Mr. Carroll, Mr. Donovan, myself, and Ms. Antoine were not in the room, would you not still have quorum?
Yes, we would.
So if we step out of the room, then you vote.
If you don't vote, it's counted in the affirmative.
But if we're not in the room, you still quorum.
You still have quorum.
So it could be a 3-1 vote.
Yes.
Any other discussion about the June 13th minutes? If hearing none, I'll ask for a vote. All those in favor of approving the June 13th, 2023 regular session minutes, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
No.
5-2. June 30th, special session. May I have, I need a motion to accept those minutes as written?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Anton, second by, I think, Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the June 30th, 2023 minutes, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. 7-0. June 25, 2023, special session. July 25th, 2023, special session. May I have a motion for approval? A motion by Mr. Carroll, a second by Mr. Wooten. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. 7-0. Okay, we'll move to our updates. We will, like I said, vote on those closed sessions after we come back out of closed session. Updates for, by our chairman of our committees, our standing committees, Mr. Wooten, Finance.
Basically have no update, still waiting on the state budget to pass, so we know how to finalize our budget. But other than that, no news.
Mr. Carroll, Legal Committee? No report. Mr. Tippett, Policy.
Next policy committee, meeting is, Thursday, 2:00. And I guess I don't have a report since we're gonna have a policy committee meeting shortly.
Okay, thank you. Bond Committee, Mr. Carroll.
Madam Chairman, we had a meeting Monday morning at Facility Services to get an update on where we are. Noted that the 2018 bond, all the projects have been contracted and are underway. I think I understand that those will be completed by the end of this school year. The North Johnston Cafeteria Addition, I believe Brooks, I'm right, ready to go by beginning of school, and the Triple S Auxiliary Gym hopefully by the end of the school year. And let's see, the 24 and 26 bond total that we're looking at in the county, our needs right now total $655.8 million. And so that we're working right now on the 24 bond referendum and the projects there. ORED is doing their thing. That is the company that gives us our growth projections, where the growth will be, to help us best determine how to prioritize our projects in terms of the needs of growth. And we should have that report hopefully by the end of October, so we can begin, making those, that progress towards those things. So we'll be meeting seriously here over the next coming year, because 24 is when we will be voting for the next round of bonds. So a lot of conversation going on between our chairman and the county commissioner chairman members for all of us to be on the same page with things we want to accomplish. So, and we want to acknowledge that the county commissioners have been very responsive to the needs of the school system, as you well know, with their funding that they've done for us.
Thank you. Anything from Legislative Committee?
We haven't met this summer. We plan to meet hopefully in August, as long as schedules can make that happen. To Mr. Wooten's point, the legislative body has said now we are not getting a budget till at least September, but they did tell us that salaries are going to be retroactive for those increased salaries can be retroactive back to July, so that's good. And they've promised a substantial increase in pay for our teachers. And I hope that is followed through with, and not what they have considered substantial in the past, because it has not been substantial.
Okay, and just real quick, I wanted to give an update. This is about students, and this is what our job is about, is what's going on in our schools. But I just wanted to, summer programs have ended. Summer schools, summer academies are over. Fall sports have started, as you probably well know. Bands are out there practicing. The summer information fair that they held was a big success this year. And also, I want to give congratulations to Paige Barnes, principal at West Clayton Elementary School, she was voted Principal of the Year, and also to Dr. Tobias Hokett, Assistant Principal at Four Oaks Middle, who was voted Assistant Principal. Dr. Hokett has a great story, a great testimony of his work through Johnston County Schools. The Beginning Teacher Institute, our new teachers, that starts tomorrow at Swift Creek. We have orientation dates that are available. That's on our website. Schools here in another 2 weeks, every school will be having their doors open for parents and students to come in, students to meet those teachers and parents to get to meet them as well. Our staff will report on August 17th and our school will start on August 29th. We will, from here on out, I believe our first one is September the 14th, we will be having recognition nights as a board. And I think we start at North Johnston High School on September 14th. So instead of having the students coming in before the board meeting or before our actual regular meeting begins, we're going to be going out there to them, and we'll be having it at high school sites, and we're going to have a time of celebration and fellowship, which is really what it should be. But I appreciate Ms. Furr for setting all that up and her staff. But that will start on September the 14th will be our first one, and obviously we will be celebrating fall activities that are going on in our school system. So just to let you know why we won't have as many young people here at our meetings. Okay, we'll move on to advisory appointments. Mr. Tippett.
Yes, the current advisory council members of Micro Elementary have approved and recommended the following applicants for renewal on the advisory committee. Justin Rogerson and Shane Stevens, both 3-year terms for 2023 through 2026.
Okay, I will take that as the first motion, and Mr. Wooten, I believe you have someone.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Alan Sasser at Pine Level Elementary for Parent Advisory Council. He's recommending 3 members for a 3-year term, renewal term. Rhonda Scott, Deborah Avery, and Tamara Brock.
Okay, I will take that as the second to the motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of these appointments to advisory councils at Micro Elementary and Pine Level Elementary, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And we will go to public comment at this time. Is it 6? Yeah, no? Well, we can move on. We'll come to public comment at 6. Yeah, some of them might not be here, that's what I'm saying. Okay, Dr. Bracy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, at this time, I ask that the board approve consent items numbers 1 through 13.
Do I hear- Okay, motion by Mr. Carroll, second by Mr. Wooten. Any discussion?
Just one question while we have time. Did I understand Ms. Cornetto right? And I want to be corrected if I'm wrong, that if someone merely ask, that it's supposed to come off. Is that correct or incorrect? I could have misunderstood what you were saying. There was a lot of dialogue.
For consent agenda items, board members can request to have them removed from the consent agenda.
Does that automatically dictate their removal?
It does not require a majority vote.
Okay, would you brief us later on that so we can get on with that? Because I'm a little confused. I mean, I don't know. I would ask about the vote. I would ask about, our policy surrounding it. I mean, because it seems like that the mere request would warrant it coming off and into the other items. Am I incorrect?
That's how I would interpret it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion about the consent
Are we-
items?
The level 3 volunteers, we talked about that a little bit. Is that something that needs to be pulled out of there? Are we good voting
We
on that?
didn't pull them out.
You did pull,
I did not.
and that's okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that is a question that has to be looked at. Because I think right now, the way it's set up now, I think we approve the way we approve substitute teachers and everybody else on the consent item. That may be something we want to look at as to how the board approves level 3 volunteers. So I mean, I'm not as good with that, the way we're on the consent item, but we will, for now, I mean, for this list, because that's something we have to learn how to do, because this is the first list and the first policy, because we don't have any information on those folks right now. So that's a discussion that we can have on whether how we want to, we go back and forth that policy and see how we want the board to approve that particular item. That's my thinking.
Any other? I think it's something that we'll look at. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Tippett? Any other conversation? Hearing none, I'll ask for the approval of the consent items remaining. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay. Dr. King.
Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, Dr. Bracy, board members. I have three items for your approval this evening. The first item is an item around geodes kits for K-2 students. We are currently using Wit and Wisdom geodes. Geodes are what are known as readable text, and they are essentially, if I can attempt to make this simple, as you all will remember, in the years before we moved to adherence to the science of reading, we often had kids use what were called level text, right? And those were texts that kids read in the instructional process as they were learning to read. Part of the science of reading is that we have shifted to this new model, which is called readable text. In this particular item, we are asking the board to allow us to go back and purchase additional sets of these. I believe 2 years ago, we came to the board when we first learned about the importance of readable text and asked the board to purchase a tranche of these. We purchased enough to allow all of our teachers in K2 to have the ability to share a set. We are asking tonight for the board's approval to use up to $600,000 to purchase an additional tranche of these, which would allow us to have each K2 teacher to have their own set of geodes.
Did we ever identify what numeric quality was associated with this tranche that you've said twice? And I love the word, by the way. Yeah, it's all good. I'm going to go with tranche if you ain't got it.
You know, I got that number, but I forgot it. I'm sorry. I bet my staff will text me and let me know, and I'll let you know as soon as we have access to it. But we do know what the number is. I left it. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I just want to know how many.
I'll get it to you.
What's
It's a good number. Do you have it? What is it?
So for kindergarten, it's 384 books. For first grade, it's 384 books, and second grade is 384 books. 12 color copies of module 1 and 2 for kindergarten, and 6 color copies of each title for first grade, and 6 color copies for each title for second grade.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Ms. Whittington.
This is an action item. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Carroll. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Johnston. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the purchase of these kits, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, Dr. King?
Thank you, board members. Next item is foundations, consumables for grades K through 3. Foundations is another of the programs that we use in our early literacy program. Specifically, Foundations works with kids around the areas of comprehensive reading, spelling, and handwriting. We have been using Foundations for approximately, I believe since 2021 was our first purchase of foundation materials. You all will remember we purchased them for K2, and we also purchased for grades 3 because we were using that structure as a means of trying to help our students who suffered loss of time during the pandemic to catch up. Don't want to go too deep in it and spoil the presentation that we'll certainly do for you all later. But we know, based on the early literacy data that's been released by the State Superintendent of Public Education, that this approach, along with the other pieces that we're doing in our early literacy program, are paying off well. Again, we'll come with a specific report for you all soon, but what we know is our students at K2, in terms of early literacy development, are outperforming students across the state, and part of that is because we have used this Foundations program along with the rest of our comprehensive program. So tonight we are asking the board to approve the purchase of consumable resources to allow teachers to continue the use of the Foundation's program. And this is a purchase that will not exceed $275,000.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Wooten. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Donovan. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the purchase of foundation consumables for K-3, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? 7-0.
Thank you, board members. Our final item is contract for additional fall 2023 school social work services. This year, we are asking the board to allow us to use one of our final ESSER pots of funding to enter contract with Maxim Healthcare Services and School Force Solutions to contract with that company to provide us with access to additional school social workers. Those school social workers will work in the first few months of this school year with the particular purpose identifying and finding those students who do not report to school immediately so that we can get those students back into our schools as quickly as possible so that they can continue to benefit from our instructional program. This contract will not exceed $100,491. And again, these are ESSER funds that are allocated for this particular purpose.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Donovan. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Wooten. Any discussion?
Is this a one-year contract for these social workers?
This is yes, ma'am.
Is it a complete 1 year, or is it an abbreviate, is it
Well,
shorter?
I think it's 1 year in that we're only entering it for this year, but I don't think they will last for the entire year. I believe the intention is that we will exhaust this service pretty quickly, correct?
They can give us the social workers, yes.
Yes.
It's just for locating missing children?
Well, I think that's the primary purpose. We'll try to get a little more out of it if we can, if we find some other services that they can provide for us. But I think what's going to be important to understand is these folks will be temporary, so they won't, many of the things that our school social workers do require kind of deep connection, and these folks might not necessarily be well suited to do that kind of work, but they can go out and kind of run down leads to identify students and bring them and make sure that we are reconnecting with them.
And the time frame is just whenever the money gives out.
Whenever the money gives out, yes, sir.
So we're not locked into that year. Whenever that money runs out, we're done.
I think that's the intention. I don't want to tie us so directly to that because we may.
These are ESSER dollars.
Yeah, ESSER dollars, and so
So if they're not used, couldn't you allocate them to something else, Mr. Britt, or is it just locked in on this specifically?
That's right. This is one of those restricted pots.
Restricted, okay.
That the state restricted it for this specific purpose.
And
So not the ESSER that came down directly to us from DPI?
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah, if we didn't use it for this specific purpose, we would revert it back to the Fed.
So the
But we're-
specific purpose was to find kids that just didn't show up to school?
Right.
Yes, ma'am.
And to the benefit of this, you went over in a previous meeting, you and Dr. Allen, about how, our ADM's affected and, that first 10 days and, from obviously we want kids in school. That's number one paramount. That's what we want. But from a financial standpoint, they could reimburse itself program-wise based on the amount of kids they locate, correct?
Absolutely should reimburse itself.
Well,
And for that purpose, those first 20 days, for the purpose of funding, those first 20 days are the only days that count. So that's why it's so critical.
Well, and also, from my experience, these individuals may discover that these students are now in school somewhere else,
Right.
which is good. I mean, you're not only finding them bring back here, you're just trying to make sure kids are in school.
Right. And both for the purpose of making sure they are receiving an education, and also that will help us on the back end in terms of our dropout rate.
Okay, any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of this contract for social work services, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you, Dr. King.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Moore.
All right, good evening, everyone. First item one is for approval of the construction bids for the addition to Benson elementary school. Benson is currently 54 students over capacity, but significant growth down towards that end of the county is projected. They currently have 5 mobile units. This addition will build a 13 classroom addition off of the 400 wing, plus a 4 classroom addition off of the pre-K kindergarten wing. And it will also help them within their boundary to help other schools adjacent to them as well. 5 bids were received, and the low bid was provided by Farrier and Sons of Farmville for a total contract amount of $8,524,500, and that does include accepting some preferred bid alternates for preferred equipment and some other contingency allowances for testing and any other unforeseen issues that happened during construction. And this one is a ESSER funded project for Action.
I'm sorry.
Dr. Brace.
Didn't we, I don't know if I was dreaming, but didn't we think one time, Mr. Moore, we would have this beginning of the school year? Didn't we, or was that never gonna happen?
Of this school year? Whew, no.
I was dreaming.
Wow.
This is an action item. I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I need to recuse myself for a possible
Okay.
conflict of interest on this.
Okay, I need a motion.
So moved.
I need a motion to allow Ms. Anton to recuse herself from the vote of this particular item.
I
So
need-
moved.
I need a
Also-
motion.
Okay, I also need to recuse myself.
Okay, so I have a motion before me for Mr. Wooten and Ms. Anton to recuse themselves from this vote.
Katie, can they do it together? Can they do it separate?
They can do it together. Do you all want to do it together? I mean, it's fine. I think it's efficient.
Okay. Do I have a motion?
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by, I'm sorry, was it Mr. Donovan? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, so the motion before us is to allow Mr. Wooten and Ms. Anton to recuse themselves from the vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now, this is an action item, the addition to Benson Elementary School. I will entertain a motion to accept this recommendation.
So moved.
A motion by Mr. Johnston, second by Mr. Donovan. Any discussion?
Similar timeline to Archer Lodge.
1 year, roughly. Mhm.
yeah.
So next school year.
And do we have, are there 5th graders there? Are they still going to Benson Middle School?
They are. So
So this is
yes.
gonna bring them back to,
Right.
so when you say 54 students over, that doesn't count all of them?
Does not count the
Right. Okay.
50-ish
Okay.
However
graders.
many are in 5th grade. Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That's an excellent point, that the addition onto the school brings the 5th grade back to the elementary school, which is what we want. Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this addition, this recommendation, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
All right, my next item is to add bleachers at 6 middle schools. So 6 of the USA Bonnell middle schools only provided bleachers on one side. So this project would add a second bank on the opposite side. We did receive we received 2 actual bids, but then 2 were no bids, because of the timeline with basketball and stuff coming up. But the low bid was provided from Learning Environments for a total contract amount of $393,700. And again, would request a contingency of 40,000 in case any issues would run in power to these bleachers or anything like that comes up during construction. And this was part of the FY 23-24 capital fund request.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion. A motion by Mr. Johnson, a second by Mr. Carroll. I know you're in favor of this. Any discussion?
Yes, ma'am, and the sole purpose was rooted in the dialogue, the sole purpose for having this added to outside of the consent agenda was the dialogue that we had in the pre-agenda board meeting, and I think it's important to highlight the things that we are.
The next one.
So, yeah,
Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote of the additional bleachers to 6 middle schools. Please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, now we'll go to 8.
I spoke premature, but the reason why I wanted to pull this out was because of the dialogue, before Brooks, you present, is because of the dialogue we had in the pre-agenda meeting. So I apologize for jumping the vote here, but this next item, I would like for you to solely focus on the compliance issues as far as accessibility, because, you know, I learned some things in that pre-agenda board meeting that I thought that would be beneficial for the public to know. So I was gonna preface that before you start.
Yes. All right. So as you know, that we had a district-wide study done to review all of our parking lots, athletic facilities, front entrances, side entrances, bus entrances, all of that, to just get a grasp of how are we at accommodating and providing access for ADA means, handicap means, because we've constantly faced onesie-twosies all the time of grandparent can't go see their grandson play football at this school, and students can't access these this area of the school and stuff because there's not sufficient means provided. So we hired a consultant to go to every school campus, and we got a binder from them that's no lies about that thick. But now that's not everything that's required to be done. That is just, hey, we check this, like checklist list of each school. So we are in compliance, but there are places that we have to provide accommodations, because we don't have self-sufficient accommodations provided. Someone has to assist them to access certain areas. So with that, we are at the point where we can move into the construction phase and start installing these additional parking spaces and signage and sidewalks and stuff like that to ensure that they're within the required law of that standard, slope of the sidewalk, all of that stuff, right up amount of parking spaces based on school capacity, so on and so forth. So this is approval of that consultant to move into the bidding and construction phase of this project for the high school portion. As I said, it's a monster. So we felt best to kind of roll into it and get started at our high school sites, because they are the most visited campuses, and then as that kind of rolls out, then we talk, okay, phase 2 and phase 3, and keep on going, and we can go as fast as we want or as methodical as we want. But this is, it's not like one big project like we're building in addition to a school. This is at every campus, and it's $100 parking space here or sign all the way to a $200,000 switchback ramp to a field that may be 15 feet of grade below. So it's all over the place. It's a lot of different items. So I kind of wanted to do it like this. The DOT does these things and have unit prices for each item and anticipate pay the quantity for them, and the bidders can just bid those on a unit price basis. And then as hey, we did 3 at this school and 5 at this school and this and that. That's how we do our monthly billing. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump the gun about the Cleveland High track, but I gotta restrain
rambled.
myself here. Yeah, I'm sorry. So with this particular ADA compliance versus the actual accessibility, you know, we were indicating how far we were behind, and how we're working to meet accessibility and requirements, and that's something that Mr. Tippett touched on while we were in our pre-agenda meeting. And I think it's important to point out, number one, this is a lot of money we're expending here, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out, no one's gonna disagree with this expenditure, but we still have a lot to do, and that funding has to come from somewhere, and there has to be a timeline placed on that, because, you know, I think everyone here would be for compliance and accessibility. So I just didn't want that skipped over in the consent agenda, and, you know, I guess I'll let y'all vote before I start talking about the Cleveland track, my fault.
What is the amount that we're spending on this?
So for this phase, the budget is $2.5 million of the seven something million total need. And that's the phase 1, the high school estimate.
Where is the money being pulled from?
It's actually a locally funded project since it's more repairs to existing sites rather than new construction, which is capital.
Are we being careful about what we're doing? I know that there's some talk about, well, the talk is all over the map on Clayton High School, but, I mean, putting in a $250,000 ramp to a space that we're going to demolish in 2 years makes no sense. So we're being careful and cautious about where we're spending these dollars.
Absolutely. So everything at Clayton High is back on the sports field. So if and when that project comes about, hopefully next bond, that would be at the front of that campus. But that's a great point, of course.
I think most of these, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't most of these things were outside the regular school building?
Yes.
At athletic fields,
Parking lots.
It wasn't access to the actual buildings. It was areas like you just said, ball fields, athletic fields, and whatever other
Greenhouses.
Yeah, greenhouse.
all of
Yeah,
that.
your stuff like that. This detached from the actual school building.
Yeah.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Woot. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Donovan. Any other discussion?
I think the question was asked how much the project is. It's $7.5 million for all of the things, but what we're voting on here is about $170,000. Is that correct?
Right. So what
Okay.
will come back next is the actual construction bids, but this is the company that prepares that bid package and.
Just so it's clear, we're not voting for $7.5 million.
No,
today.
sir.
So, yeah, but I'm not sure that number.
And this was part of our request to the commissioners as well, so it was in our
Yes,
budget.
That's right.
This was in our budget.
Right.
Okay, any other discussion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay.
All right, last item, Mr. Johnston. Cleveland High Track, as you know, we approved a contract, back in May. Ooh, that date's wrong. Back in May for binding to do the surfacing and paving, but once we removed the existing asphalt, we found a subgrade that had a lot of soil in it versus gravel. So it's what we call a contaminated subgrade. that would not pass a proof roll. So in lieu of going and cutting out about 2 feet of dirt all the way around that track and then hauling new gravel back in, proposing a full depth reclamation, which is mixing cement in with the current subgrade, just like a big tiller in the water. And what you get is a very strong foundation. I mean, it's like concrete at that point, and then you pave over it. So it's a very cost effective, but an even stronger base that will serve that track a long time, much longer, even if we undercut it.
And that was the highlight of what I was requesting you point out, of how the extra expenditure will be negated by the usefulness of the track. So I do appreciate you doing that.
Yes.
Mr. Moore, did that happen over time, or was it just a bad subgrade that was put down by the previous company that put the information? Okay, you've answered my
Want me to
question.
answer that
So
question?
And before his time.
I understand where you're coming from.
So,
Okay.
I mean, I didn't want to waste money trying to pave over that. So
No, you're
this
doing the
is
right thing. I mean, it's
This
the
is
right
the
thing to do.
long-term fix.
Are we in discussion? Okay.
Oh, sorry. So, for recommendation.
I don't,
Yes.
I do have something to ask, but I don't know if you want to go
Okay,
into
this is an action item. Do I have a motion? I have a motion by Mr. Johnston. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Wooten. Okay, now, any discussion?
So the concrete solution to this problem is expensive, like $375,000, I think is what you have listed.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you consider or get bids on like geomats, or like you said, there's some haul off because it typically isn't the whole portion under it, that you just take portions that are bad and you'd haul off those? Have you looked into any other solutions that'd be more cost effective?
I have. One thing is timing, because to haul that much dirt off, it's a significant amount of dirt and truckloads and all of that. And football season, their first jamboree is next week, and the mat and the backfilling would be a little bit more cost effective, but again, the time and the impact and all and for a little bit more, we can get like a concrete sub base versus a.
So, I mean, it is overkill to do under a track.
Yeah,
the concrete
and,
sub bill, but
I know.
But
Yeah.
to your point, that was my secondary follow-up question. Is this about a timing issue that we want to get this track available to the kids to be able to play on and use and be useful? Because there is value in time too. So if that's what it is, then that's what it is.
Time and just the fear of the unknown as well. I mean, I project 2 feet, but there could be pockets of 4 feet, or so you just don't know, and it could turn into just as much as this is, or more once you open it up.
Right, and so the geotech company that's doing this, have you gotten a secondary opinion or anything from anybody else?
We did do borings and get a geotech's opinion and recommendation. And this is actually a second opinion. We didn't go with the first opinion.
What was the first opinion?
So from the current company that we have a contract with. So.
And what was their opinion?
Are we in open session still? It was very similar, but it wasn't.
Yeah, just be careful.
This was a better price.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this proposal, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, Thank you.
Just want to thank Mr. Moore. I mean, I feel like I'm in a classroom every month when you go to the podium, really. And I always Google when you talk.
Anything ever come back wrong?
I mean, I've been on, most of us have been on switchback ramps. I didn't know that was the proper term.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
So when I Googled it, I was like, yeah, absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
We're going to take a 5-minute break and come back for public comment. Thank you so much. Welcome back to our meeting. We are going to resume with public comments, and as you know, I need to read a little statement before we begin. Tonight, we have 5 speakers signed up for public comment. 2 of them will actually be together, so really 4 separate. Citizens who have signed up to address the board during the public comment session will be recognized in the order in which they signed up. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to present comments to the board. However, the public comment session will not exceed 60 minutes total, except by a majority vote of the board. The board suggests that specific personnel or student matters be addressed to the school principal, the Johnston County Public School System official responsible for the program or facility, or to the superintendent. Citizens who address the board shall not use language that is obscene, profane, threatening, containing fighting or inflammatory words, or otherwise disruptive to the orderly conduct of business. Any person who willfully interrupts, disrupts, or disturbs an official meeting and who, upon being directed to leave the meeting by the presiding officer, willfully refuses to leave the meeting may be found guilty of a Class 2 misdemeanor pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.17. Our first speaker for tonight is Brett McWhirter. Did I say that right?
Close enough.
Okay, thank you.
Hello and good evening, Johnston County School Board, Superintendent Bracy. I want to take a moment to thank you all for the hard work you've been putting into this school year, planning for our schools to be run efficiently and for teachers to have what they need. However, I have taken considerable issue with the grade inflation tactic that has been recently deployed and feel that it is harming children rather than helping. But that's not my major focus tonight. Mine is on the parents. I'm a father of 2 wonderful children, and as a father, I have a lot of roles. Chef, taxi driver, financial advisor, bank, seamstress, provider, protector, therapist, disciplinarian, pillow fluffer, maid, dishwasher, mechanic, minister, role model. But one of my most important jobs is an educator. My job as a parent is to be responsible for my children's education, and their academic outcomes, successes, and failures rest on my shoulders. While we leverage third-party educational institutions to help us foster and facilitate academics, at the end of the day, that ultimate responsibility is ours as parents, not teachers, not the administration, not the state, or the boards that provide these services. I'm floored and appalled by parents who have told me firsthand, the school is responsible for my child's education, or we read sometimes, but not every day. Who has time for that? There are some parents whose 3rd grader doesn't fully know their alphabet, much less could read a Dr. Seuss book independently. See where academic neglect has delivered us. A young lady, an ESL student, stood right here, spoke to the school board last year, and had progressed into middle school without being able to proficiently read and write English, and pleaded to the board for help. How is this allowed to happen year after year? Policy Code 1310/4002 directly affirms that parents are vital to the educational achievement, but this policy needs to be in better practice. We need programs in place that will change the narrative and perception that the state is solely responsible for the child's education. Parental engagement is paramount to student success. There is no greater factor. I think that a lot of parents are well-meaning, but are completely overwhelmed with day-to-day life, same as our teachers are. And I think teachers would strongly appreciate more parental involvement, because a teacher might be the most influential person in a school setting, but they'll never hold the candle to the influence of a parent. So if a parent expresses a nonchalant or flippant attitude towards a child's education, that's going to be reflected in their child. But if a parent shows real vigor and a real promotion of education at home, then I think that would be successful. To my fellow parents, ask not what your school board is doing for your child's education. What are you doing for it? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Emily Scott.
Hello. My name is Emily Scott, and I'm the parent of 3 Johnston County Public School students, and I'm a Johnston County Public School teacher going on my 18th year. As a governing body, you are often forced to make difficult and sometimes polarizing decisions, but I'm here to offer support for something we can all agree upon: the safety of our children. The #1 cause of death for children in the United States is gun violence. I know you take this sobering statistic seriously because of last year's implementation of the weapons detection system installed at each school last year. While working as a high school teacher in this county and one other, I have endured 2 emergency lockdowns. I have had a gun confiscated from a student while in my classroom, and I have received an explicit targeted gun threat. I have guided my students through countless lockdown drills, and I have been trained each year in active shooter protocol. As a parent, I have had to explain lockdown drills to my children when they were as young as 5 years old. All 3 of them have valid worries about violence in their schools. I know every single parent, child, and teacher understands how this worry about gun violence crawls into our hearts and stays there. These experiences led me to begin volunteering with Be Smart, a national nonpartisan organization that encourages families to practice secure gun storage. SMART stands for Secure All Firearms, Model Responsible Behavior Around Firearms, Ask about the presence of unsecured firearms before your child visits for a playdate, Recognize the role of firearms in suicide, and tell your peers about SMART. We offer free presentations about the importance of safely securing firearms to any group of adults by request. We are also endorsed by and partnered with the National Parent-Teacher Association as leaders in promoting gun safety. We would like to invite you, any PTA, booster club, and professional development coordinators to consider scheduling a presentation from us tailored to the needs of your group. You took a bold step last year by implementing the weapons detection systems, but wouldn't it be the ultimate goal to have not a single weapon even make it that far? That's where we come in. We would like to begin our partnership with you by offering these informational cards to be sent home with parents of all students with their back-to-school orientation information. I look forward to working with you closely for a safe school year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to give you things?
And to me, if you'd
Okay.
like.
Thank you. This is just an example of what we're about to do.
Thank you for a service to our district as well.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is April Lee.
Good evening, Chair Andrews, Vice Chair Tippett, members of the board, and Dr. Bracy. I'm April Lee. I'm a parent of students who attend Johnston County Public Schools, a taxpayer, and a public education advocate. Thank you for listening to concerned citizens and teachers. My hope is that you ensure that teachers receive adequate funding for their classrooms and the supplies that enhance student learning. Our teachers and classified staff deserve classroom funding from the district, not from their personal bank accounts and donations made by parents in the community. In July, I learned that JCPS ranks 114 out of 115 school districts in per pupil expenditures. This includes funding from federal, state, and local coffers. When we strip away state and federal funding, we rank 88th out of the 115 districts, touching the bottom third of the state's districts. While there is no single body at fault for this, and y'all aren't a taxing body, so it certainly doesn't fall to you, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that Johnston County is also the fastest growing county in our state. And while there are folks who want to paint our public schools as failing our children, our schools are actually thriving centers of our communities. And they are doing a fine job educating the bulk of our kids, even though the job has become increasingly more challenging. Do we have areas where we need to improve? Absolutely. But I am proud of the work our teachers and classified staff do in our district. I'm also going to take a moment to remind teachers and classified staff that a raise that does not keep up with inflation is not a raise, especially when our pay has been neglected by our legislators for years. We are still waiting on a budget, and there has been no indication of what raises for teachers, classified staff, and other state employees will look like. I'm disappointed that our legislative committee hasn't met at all this summer, when this is a crucial time to communicate with and encourage our legislature, possibly with a resolution, to pass the budget that was due to the constituents of our state before July 1st. Shouldn't it be the duty of the board to advocate for public schools and employees in this capacity? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Our next speakers together are David Spann and Dale Lands. And we're going to sort of treat you as two speakers, so
Okay.
go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Andrews. Hello, everybody. Glad to be back again. Thank you to the Board of Education members for allowing us to make comments again, and to Dr. Bracy. I'm here tonight to offer some assistance on behalf of the Johnston County Republican Men's Organization. I am the chairman of this group, and we are in good standing with the North Carolina Republican Men's Federation. The North Carolina Federation is also supportive of this effort and looking to make this a statewide effort. So we're kind of going to be the starting point of something that we're trying to turn into a statewide attempt to get constitutions in every kid's hands. We organized a couple years ago. We've had regular monthly meetings since then, and we plan to work to educate residents of Johnston County, students, anybody in Johnston County that's interested in all things government, but starting with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. We agreed as a group in our last meeting that a great way to educate the public would be to start with educating the students of Johnston County about our Constitution and the other founding documents that were critical to the birth of our great country. These documents must be handed down to our young people so they understand the principles the USA was founded on. We cannot afford to allow another generation to go without extensive knowledge of these founding documents and principles. The way we have determined to do this is by getting a copy of a pocket constitution in every student's hands. Now, that's a huge undertaking to do that. There was 36,000 students here. But we want to work this year, starting right away, to try and get them into seniors' hands, because they are the ones that we lose first. So simple math will put you around 2,500 kids, so that's where we want to start at. We hope that we are able to continue this effort down the road and continue to increase this program every year by working with you guys and all the administrators in the school system to try and get these into students' hands. Now, I have David Spain with me today. He is the vice chair of our JCRMO men's group, and he is also the chair of the Constitution group. He's going to give you a little rundown of the things that he's trying to get attempted, and then I'll kind of close it out after he's done. You want me to hand that stuff?
No, I'll give it to him in a minute. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your attention. I am David Spain. I want to read this. Done this 17th day of September in the year of our Lord 1787. Where was that from? That was from the last line of our Constitution. Why September 17th do we, as a law, celebrate? Because we have the best document ever recorded by men in the history of any country. Against all odds, Americans won their independence, and most thought it was a miracle. And what we were handed was a republic and not a tyranny, because most republics had failed. This group of men put themselves together to form the greatest document. Americans had risked everything. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor, and most of them lost it all, if you've read your history about these men. It was for liberty, not freedom, for liberty. Liberty is different from freedom. Freedom can be taken away by man. Liberty is an inalienable right given to us and stated in the Declaration of Independence. The framers knew this, and they said that the citizens were had to be imbued with the spirit of republicanism, which means people who understand the principles of the Constitution, who valued self-government, and would be willing to work necessary for its maintenance, Citizens who would not yield to demagogues who promise prosperity, security, and anything at the price of liberty. James Madison said this: a well-instructed people could be permanently a free people, a free people. By a well-instructed people, Madison meant, above all, people well-educated about our constitutional liberties and responsibilities. Finally, a quote, as Ben Franklin was leaving the Constitutional Congress. A woman asked him, do we have a republic or a monarchy? A republic if we can keep it. That's why I'm here, because we want to keep our republic, and we want to come together with you to provide additional education, starting with the Constitution, because every child needs to read it. But the seniors need to read it first, because they're going to be the voting class next year. Other ideas that we have is we want to increase constitutional literacy across all of Johnston County. It's imperative. Constitutional literacy means supplementing your classes and your teachers with additional resources and classes, helping to teach, helping to bring, again, a county oratorical society. Now, not all of this is going to happen at once. This is a long-term plan with a lot of things that we want to implement over the years as an educational group to continue the education. Internships, scholarships, students to Patriot Academy, mock legislation in Johnston County like they have at the legislature, teacher additional training and sending them places, teaching additional resources, hands-on activity like your own Camp Flintlock, historical speakers, national, and in teaching the history of the country. As Ronald Reagan said, and I'll close with this, and I have other quotes and I'll give it to you to read, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We don't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed to them to do the same. We need to protect our republic. Thank you.
Did you want to close?
Yeah, I would. I'd like to, if you don't mind. Kind of to clear up exactly what we're asking you to do. So what we want from you guys today, I assume everybody in this room believes in the Constitution and the importance of these founding documents. So to achieve our goals, we need the help of the Board of Education, Dr. Bracy, every administrator in the school, the principals, the kids, everybody has to help if we're going to achieve this goal. So we're asking for you guys to give us some direction how we're able to get into these schools. The people that are Board of Education members, you are all assigned schools, so maybe you can help us get to the principals, who we need to talk to. Maybe we set up tables, maybe we do it through, we're putting it in every homeroom. We'd like some direction from you guys on how to do it, but we're willing to fund providing these constitutions to the amount that we could get to each year. Okay? Thank you guys for allowing us to speak. We
Thanks
appreciate
so much. Okay, yeah, Mr. Ventrano.
Thank you much. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of Dr. Bracy, we have two administrative recommendations for you this evening. The first is to serve as interim principal, Mr. Kenneth Bennett. He's a retired principal from Johnston County Public Schools and has helped us out before. We're asking that he serve as interim principal at Corinth Holders Elementary School.
Okay, this is an action item. I'll entertain a motion. Motion by Mr. Johnson, second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this recommendation, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Second, we have an assistant principal recommendation for you. This will be a 2-year contract if approved. Katie Lynn Olmstead to serve at Wilson's Mills Elementary School, again as assistant principal.
Okay, this as well as an action item. I'll entertain a motion.
So move.
Motion by Mr. Donovan, second by Mr. Wooten. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of this recommendation, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. 7-0. Thank you. Dr. Pierce. You do have on your iPad, you gonna start with second read?
Whatever your.
Okay, well, that was just the next one in order. Is that?
All right.
You do have on your iPad, the technical changes in policy. Policy code 1740, 4010, policy 1750, 7220, policy code 1742, 5060, policy code 3470, 4305.
So in the maybe I should ask how you want it. You want me to just read through each one of them word for word, or what is the pleasure?
There.
Well, if you're asking for feedback, I would prefer a synopsis and any significant changes, but that would be up to the board.
Right, I think that's, I mean, I agree, I think, because if you're talking about amendments, that's what I was saying earlier. For amendments, it's already here. We look at the changes, content changes, but it's, technical is gonna be, the technical ones are gonna be,
So the first packet of technical corrections, and just, if I may, the School Boards Association, that we pay for subscription that helps us with policies, they take what the legislator does, and when the legislator makes updates, they send us recommendations for things on technical corrections like, hey, a general statute change, you need to update this reference or what have you. So the first line item on here of the technical corrections, if you look through those policies, it may be something as simple as like on policy 1510, it says see policy 4302 school management plan for student behavior. It's just another policy that it says reference that may have had as you know, we've changed all of our policies that may have had an updated policy number, where the old number might have been 1,000 and it updated it to a different one. So the minor technical correction changes policy would be those policies that the School Board Association has sent to us and gave us different updates in there. So also in that 1510, if you went on page 4 of 5, the policy has changed names, and so it was 1710, 4020, 7230, discrimination, harassment prohibited by federal law. Now the new policy we have, which is not a new policy, but it's just cleaning up the references, prohibiting against discrimination, harassment, and bullying, 1710, 4020, 7230. So in the policies, all the adjustments are marked in red, all the strikeouts, and that is the technical corrections piece. I don't want to give you something you don't want, but you want me to just keep going through each individual one that's on there, or that's the packet of minor policies?
That's good.
Yeah, I think that's sufficient.
So that would be all of those policies in the technical correction range. There's no content changes to those policies. All right, the next policy, 1740, 4010, student parent grievance. If you pull that policy up, everything in the red has been adjusted. With working with our attorneys, one of the things that was needed was just clarifying who handles grievances when they are submitted, and then what the next steps in the process are. So what you will see in here is we struck out a student, parent, guardian, or legal custodian may initiate the grievance procedure when they believe that a final administrative decision has violated a board, well, that's what decision ends. And we put, however, complaints that allege a final administrative decision as defined below may be made by a school employee. And so we try to separate and clarify who does it, where they do it, and give more guidance to the steps in the process. And so what you'll see in 1740 is just clarifying and to some play, I hate to say this, I'm not being, don't mean this in any ill way to our attorneys, sometimes semantics of words. You put, it might say the same thing, but instead of it being at the end of the paragraph, it's now sequentially at the beginning of the paragraph. Does that help clarify some of those changes, Mrs. Cornetto?
Absolutely. Anything in green has been already in the policy, but it's just been reorganized. And there's a duplication of the very first paragraph. It should be struck from under options for resolving complaints.
And then anything in the policy that is in red would be additions. So,
Dr. Pierce, let me just say, I think just for the public's information, everything that we're seeing here is available on the school website and has been available on the school website for the past 60 days. So what when Dr. Pierce is saying this, I would encourage all you guys to go to the website. Again, first read is 30 days, second read is 30 days. and you have the opportunity to give your public input and send in questions. Because what the first read, when we get to the first read, those are not a done deal yet. The second read is what we're voting on tonight, is to implement those policies. So if you see first read, you still got 30 more days to give input on those. Just to clarify that for the public, for anybody watching.
And also just remember that every policy is tied to general statute.
So any questions on 1740, 4010? All right, the next policy is 1750, 7220. Sort of the same scenario, grievance procedures for employees. So once again, we're clarifying the role of the employee. Talks about the days. It clarifies new things are in red, things that have been struck out, and then some different things that have been added from referencing other policies, such as claims of discrimination, harassment, and bullying based on race, color, national origin. This is on page 2, I apologize. It says that those things should be addressed under 1720, 4015, 7225. So it's just trying to clarify certain things that you're complaining about. There's certain policies that you go after. It may not be a grievance. It may actually be covered under federal protection of Title IX or what have you, and it's clarifying where you need to go. Gives the steps in the grievance on page 4, talking about the informal resolutions of the policy, how you file the grievance. If you keep on page 5, it just clarifies even more on, how the grievance and the content that's required to be in the grievance when you file that. And then the days that the response has to be given by the official, the role of the board if it has to come to an appeal. And then the notice at the end, and then it gives references. All right, 1742. There has been adjustments made in cleaning up the policies on number 6 and number 7. Once again, just as we change the names of policies or that we have done numbers. And just so you all know, board members, we went through and transitioned over to the series of policies that we're in now over the last 3 years. The next year, we will be coming back with all of these kind of corrections where policy numbers got changed. And when the policy passed, it might have said that it was policy 1500, but it was really 1400 when we finally got to that policy later on in the sequence, and that was not a good example, but say it's 1,400, then it might have turned into 7,000. So we'll have to go back and clean up, because in January, we might have passed it as one thing, then we passed the other one in March or April, and so some of this year will be more cleanup of those technical pieces. So you'll see the cleanup of the policy numbers, and that's the only adjustments on that policy. That's 1742. All right, and then 3470. This is a request that was made to the Policy Review Committee specifically on the second page, and I apologize, they're not numbered, but the section is actually C. It's the transfer to alternative learning programs. And then you would go section CD, and the adjustment has been made that we would allow a waiver of this clause that can be granted by the superintendent or designee. D right now says anyone between the ages of 17 and 21 that enrolls in a high school with less than 9 credits would be sent to our alternative learning program. And that is allowed through at risk through the state. But one of the things that this is open for us is there's some students, and I won't get into any details here, but there's some students that they have not been in a sequential dropout. They're not doing this to meet probation requirements. They have just never had an education. That may be their first time to the country, and so it was putting them in a situation where they were immersed into an area where they might have needed a different transition for education. And so we put in here for a waiver to be allowed in certain situations, so everything's looked at as a case by case, and nothing was just a guarantee. If you were 17 with less than 9 credits, that's what happens. So that's the only addition there.
These are action item, this is an action item of those policies under second read. So I will entertain a motion to accept these policies
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
by Mr. Donovan, second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion?
The reason why I asked for this to be pulled out and for us to discuss policy outside of a consent agenda where the public never hears about it directly from the board is because inside our policy, it says that during discussion of a policy proposal, the views of the public, parents, students, and staff will be considered. And I know that most of us are very proficient with a computer and can look things up, but not everybody is. And I think it's only fair that they have opportunity outside of going to a website, trying to navigate through, find the policy, look it up, see what the changes are on their own, and then come to whatever channel they can to try and have input on that. And I think this provides a good outlet for the community to do that. Additionally, the board committee is a committee. They don't take action, they just simply study things and bring it to the board for the action. And if we're gonna take action and vote on things, I think we should all understand exactly what we're voting on. So having this brought to us, this is in policy 2400. It says the Johnston County Board of Education reserves to itself the functions of developing and revising policies for the school system. That is our main job. That's how we direct the school. I think that has to be imperative and put out in the open. I had no problems with your second read, by the way.
And I think just so for the public to know, to understand the process, when the policy committee meets, I think we've had a team of 6 legal representatives with us thus far. So whenever a first read gets here, that's gone through not just your policy, because it's not Mr. Donovan, Ms. Andrews, and myself that have come up with a policy. That policy is passed the legal test. And that's why it comes to the first read. And again, let me state again, the first read is never a done deal. You still got 30 days left. So that's the important thing. And I think last time, I think we actually pulled something. I think we pulled something out of second read to adjust and make a few things. So nothing's ever set in stone. So I mean, it's everybody has the opportunity. Now, obviously, when we have a lot of input from the public, a lot of input from the board, not everything gets changed. Not all those things get in. It gets in based on what we think, what the committee wants, thinks is the best interest of our Johnston County Public Schools, and what our legal team says we can and can't do. Because believe me, there are some things that we simply can't put in because of legal issues at times. So I just want to clarify that there's a legal team rather than just the 3 of us sitting in the room. And you've been on that committee before, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you recently, because, things deviate as time progresses, but recently, Kevin, Ms. Andrews, and Terry, how much feedback are you getting on your first? I would guess it would be minimal for the most part on the majority of your.
So we receive, are you asking me or Terry? I'm sorry.
Well, I was asking the.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
So currently right now, we received some feedback from board members. We received some from educators as far as our principals. And we receive every now and then some feedback on our feedback form from parents on the online Google form, but not often. And that has not been just now. That's sort of been always, it's sort of been how it works. If they have concerns, they normally will come to public comments.
Yeah, I think a lot of those, Dr. Pierce gets a lot of the input from the administrators. They don't come to us.
Yeah, totally.
They go to him, and he brings all those every meeting, and we look at everything every meeting. But to your question, it's not as much public input from the public as you like to have. And I'm not sure how you fix that. I mean, this isn't going to fix that. I don't have a problem with public knowing what we're doing, but this isn't going to fix public input.
I just think that most public doesn't even know that these policies are being adjusted or changed. Most people are living their daily lives and working and raising children, and they aren't thinking about, hey, I need to go to the JCPS website, try and navigate through to find the adjusted policies, read through them, then try and find the appropriate person that I need to send some feedback to or put it on a Google. It just doesn't happen, so I think here is a good forum and being very transparent with the public. They can see exactly what we're doing. There's nothing hidden. And the fact is, a committee is a committee. It is not the board. It is not your decision how to take action. You bring it to the board, and the 7 elected members get to decide how to take action. Not only that, I would ask for some clarification, because the chair lady indicated that all our policies are tied to legislation, or, in compliance with, they're tied to legislation. I believe that's what she said. And I believe that we can have policy outside of legislation. It just needs to be compliant with any legislation that exists. Not every policy that we have is a part of legislative body. Is that correct, Ms. Cornetto?
That's correct. It also needs to be in compliance with case law precedent prior to legislative changes, and your policies are that.
It doesn't need to be compliant with executive orders, is that correct?
It depends on what the board votes for.
But it does not need to be compliant with a presidential executive order is not something it needs to be compliant with, is that correct?
Which one are you speaking of?
There's a few of them.
It depends on what it is.
So should it come before the public and the board to make that clear?
The policy committee meets in open session monthly, and it's noticed to the public, and they can participate by coming.
And most people work a job. They can't be there at 9 a.m. to participate in a meeting that is not live streamed.
Well, I remember we had a robust discussion a meeting or two ago about, was it dress code policy? Was that what we had the public come and question that policy? So obviously there is, some public looking at that, and there was a robust discussion, and there was, I think that's what Vice Chairman Tippett pulled the policy, even at the second read, to make some adjustments that we heard from the public that they felt like should be made to make it, I think, more amenable to the public. So, we operate by committee. If we don't operate by committee, we're going to be here forever trying to do these things. And we do, ultimately, yes, the whole board approves what the committee does. So, I think most of these folks would find that the majority of these policies are the most boring things in the world. There are some very important ones that are very important to employees, to students, and, trying to put some discipline or some organization here. But, and I understand that we don't want to shut the public out. But if there's an interest in a policy, the public has a way of, it seems to me, they have a way of coming and finding out and voicing their approval, disapproval. So,
Well, to be fair, Mr. Carroll, the policy that was about dress code was actually put on social media. So a lot of people knew about it from social media. So unless you want to put the policies, all of them, up on social media to try and perk some interest from people, I don't know what other things we can do besides having a transparent and open conversation right here when the committee does their work and brings us the policy, and we can just look them over. I mean, this didn't take that much time to have him just, peruse through them, give us the opportunity to have a conversation about it, and then make a vote.
And I don't have a problem the way we're doing it if we read the amendments and the changes in the policy. I don't have a problem with the way Dr. Pierce is doing it. But I don't, and again, as I stated, if it's a new policy, we will do that policy pretty much word for word in open session as we develop new policies, because those people haven't seen those. If we're making amendments to policies that have been out there, and I get your point, but I just wonder how many people we're touching here tonight. I mean, I think all these people here would probably have pulled up policies and looked at them. I mean, I get your point. But I don't know how much more we can do to Yeah, but you understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, and I also take a little bit of issue because there's been a new kind of quasi-rule instituted that board members now have a 10-day, we have to, as a board member, give the policy committee some 10-day notice about something that we are having some issue with. There's nothing in policy that says that there's a 10-day provision that we have to come to you with.
The 10 days is so we have time to get it back around to policy members, to legal team. And that was the format that was used, I don't know, 4 years ago maybe, about the policy committee. That was the procedures that were used 4 months ago. The 10 days thing is, again, it's just to get it. You got 60 days, but the 10 days is just to be able to get in touch with to run it by the legal teams and to do those kind of things. That's what the 10 days is for.
And that can be a suggested amount of time, but to superimpose that as something that has to be put on a board member that they, or a community member, that they have to get you something in 10 days.
We haven't put anything on the community.
I just want it to be as open and
No,
transparent
if
as
you want to be open and transparent, there's been nothing put on the community. The community hasn't been 10 days.
Well, you want to be open and transparent. I gave you a lot of policy
And
suggestions. I was told I was going to get some feedback. I've never gotten any feedback.
And you asked for contradictions. There are no contradictions according to the legal team. I mean, it is what it is.
I don't know, because I've never gotten feedback.
That's.
Do we have any more discussion?
Madam, call the question.
Okay, it is an action item for the second read board policies. I will call. We have a motion. We've already had a motion and a second. Yes, we've been in discussion.
That's what we can talk.
Yeah. I will call for the vote. All those in favor of the second read board policies, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? 7-0. Now, you want to go over our first read, which is really, we're only given approval for first read to go to.
You're not giving any approval.
Okay.
This is only
We're just making
information.
reference to first read.
Just information, correct.
If you will look, those are also in your iPad, if you'll take a look at them.
So policy, and you'll see that these are all the 2000s. So as we go back through, School Board Association provides us the PLS, policies that lead school document, and these are the recommendations that comes from the School Board Association. And so policy 2120, Code of Ethics for School Board Members, adjustment has been made in red on B4. It added the words "and integrity," and it also added the sentence "and complying with all board policies that set expectations of conduct, regardless of whether the policy expressly required compliance by board members." And then that would be the only adjustment to that policy, 2120.
And that was, that change was requested by the North Carolina School Boards Association?
That was the recommendation, yes, ma'am. All right. The next policy is 2121, which is board member conflict of interest. Item number 1, it says a member will not solicit or receive personal financial gain. Excuse me, this is an addition, to be clear. Personal financial gain from the school system by means of intimidation, undue influence, or misuse of school system employees in violation of General Statute 14-234.2. And on page 2, number 3, it added a board member who is also a director, officer, or governing board member of a nonprofit will not, 1, knowingly vote on, participate in, deliberations on, or administer any contract with a nonprofit. 2, influence or attempt to influence the deliberation of a vote of others or any such contract. Or 3, solicit or receive any gift, reward, or other benefit in exchange for recommending, influencing, or attempting to influence the award of such contract in violation of General Statute 14-234.3. Once the board member's recusal is recorded in the minutes of the board may enter into or administer the contract. And then the only other thing is in the legal reference. It adds legal reference 23.4.2 and 234.3.
I actually didn't have a question on that first policy, because I read it when it first came out, that there's this proposed change on, that we would, that the code of conduct then would extend down to what the code of conduct is for children, for the students, to a board member. Am I reading that incorrectly? There's policies regarding how children's,
2120, is that what you're referencing? I'm sorry.
one that you read about the ethical obligations, where it changed integrity and it changed the other one.
Oh, and complying with all board policies that set expectations for conduct regardless of whether the policy expressly requires compliance by board members. I would defer to the board or the attorney for the question.
Sorry,
It's number, I think, 2120, number 4 is her question.
Civility and integrity to students, employees, and all elements of the community. No problem there.
it is the next line of red that you'll see.
There's not another red line. Hold on. That said expectations of conduct regardless of whether the policy expresses requires compliance by board members.
I'm sorry, it went off and then it came back. I had it right.
Ms.
Yeah, it says-
Antoine, is your question about whether student policies apply to board members?
Because
Yeah,
it
it's not
says
intended.
complying with
It's not
all
intended.
board policies, all, that set expectations for conduct regardless of whether the policy expressly requires compliance by a board member. That, to me, says all would extend down into policies that talk about student behavior or students.
It's actually conduct for board members that apply to board members.
But it says that it's going to comply with all board policies that set expectation for conduct regardless of whether the policy expressly requires compliance by board members.
This is a policy code of ethics for school board members specifically.
Right, and it sets aside that and says that board members now will comply with all board policies that set expectations for conduct regardless of whether the policy expressly requires compliance by a board member. The language just looks like it needs some looking at. We don't have to discuss it any more than that.
I think what she's saying is, I will take it this way. What you're saying is if we expect a certain conduct by students, we should abide by the same conduct. I agree with you on that.
No, that's what the policy will say. But here's the thing, it may say that students can't drink alcohol. Well, an adult board member could drink alcohol. I mean, we have.
Most of that's gonna be related to on school premises during the school hours. You know, we can't regulate what a student does at home, out of school with their parents.
I'm saying we're moving into language that might cause issue, and I think we should carefully reconsider that language.
And because it's a first read, I'll make that note and we will.
Thank you.
2123, the only addition is 2123, the only addition to there is Consortium of State School Boards Association, and it struck out National School Boards Association, so it changed what the actual group is. That's the only addition. We good? All right, the next is confidential information, 2125-7315. You'll see that there in red is A, personnel files, and nothing else in that section was changed. B, student records, it clarifies student records, employees and board members shall safeguard the confidentiality of student records as provided in policy 4700, student records. And then C, added handling and transmitting personal identifiable information. The superintendent designee is directed to establish and enforce processes and protocols for the secure handling and electronic transmission of personal identifiable information and students and employees. The other thing that's added is you'll see on the second page, it says other resources, and it talks about transmitting private information electronically, best practice guide for communicating personal identifiable information by email, fax, or other electronic means, and then it gives the email for DPI that they shared with this recommendation. Um, 2210, duties of officers. On page 2, number 6, it adds, or alternatively, ensure board members have effective access to the current electronic versions of the manuals. And that is the only adjustment to 2210. All right. The next one is 2302, remote participation in board meetings. It's puts in there the Johnston County Board of Education. It's what's added on page 1. And then on page 6, it adds the rules for remote meetings. And you'll see the word remotely added in number 1. And number 2, it says that if the number 2, what was added, if the original meeting notice did not specify a remote meeting, what you can and can't do there. Then on page 7, number 9, it says that prior to scheduled time for the beginning of a public hearing, it adds that, and it strikes the word after and takes place, and it adds a legal reference for the open meetings advisory letter PDF from the School Board Association. All right, and then 2400 board policies. In the second paragraph, it adds number 2 and says, or the board grants a school a waiver requested under policy 3430, school improvement plan, and then it strikes however and adds the word in addition to that, and then it gives the cross-reference of school improvement plan policy 3430 as a cross-reference. All right. The next policy is policy 2410, policy development. And there's quite a bit of red here, so just tell me if you want me to stop, all right? Policy development, the Johnston County Board of Education, the board assigns to the superintendent and/or the superintendent's designee the responsibility of continued review and evaluation of the policies adopted by the board and of bringing to the board's attention the need for adopting, revising, or rescinding particular policies. And then it strikes out Johnston County and just says board because we mentioned Johnston County in the beginning. And then in the second paragraph says it has the word new or the revisions of existing policies. And then it says proposals to adopt, revise, or rescind policies may be added to the agenda in accordance with Board Policy 2330, board meeting agendas. Section B has been added, adoption of new policies. And just for just so it's clear here, we are rescinding several policies and putting them into one. So that's why you see a lot of policies here. We're rescinding current policies 2420, 2440, and 2450 and putting them all in 2410. So there's a lot of things that have already been in other policies. We're just putting them all in one policy. It's not something new. It's just been somewhere else. Right.
There's no striking of language on this policy. It's all additional language, and it's mostly
From
just
the other-
compiling the
From the other policies.
Just
Yes, ma'am.
cut and paste from the other policies.
Let me keep reading. I'm getting head shakes both ways, so I don't know which way. Okay.
I think because it is just, you can see, and the public can see.
If you look at the bottom, you can tell what policies they came from.
That's right.
The other policies made it really confusing to look at all those policies, but that's why they were all put in one, to have one document for everything.
All right, 2430, you will see the addition of the Johnston County Board of Education. Then you will see it was added that a physical policy manual will be kept at the Board of Education office to serve as the official policy manual of the board and will be available for inspection by the public during regular office hours. An electronic duplicate of the official policy manual will be accessible through the school system website. The board intends that the official physical manual and the electronic duplicate will have identical content at all times. However, should a discrepancy between the two arise, it will be resolved in accordance with the board's most recent action on the policy. Then it strikes out. And then the other addition to this is the superintendent designee shall update both the physical policy manual and the electronic copy in a timely manner as new policies are adopted and existing policies are revised or rescinded by the board. The superintendent shall also ensure the timely upkeep of any copies of the manual that have been distributed in physical or electronic form. Then it strikes everything else and gives a cross-reference of policy development 2410, which is the policy we just shared before this one.
And I will make note, our policy manual printed out is 9,000 pages. So it's a big manual.
All right, and then the last one is 2610, it's titled Board Attorney. In the second paragraph, you'll see the word only. It strikes following procedures established by, and it says only with prior approval from the superintendent or designee or otherwise may be provided by procedures established by the superintendent. And just for clarity here, it's what staff may contact the board attorney, and that's saying that will be at the direction of the superintendent before staff contact the board attorney. So that's clarifying.
Any questions? Any other questions? Concerns? Thank you for that information. Hearing no other business before the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Let me just.
We need to
I'm
pass
sorry.
that.
I kn- that was an information session, so board members, if there's anything you come up with between now and Thursday, hopefully, we're gonna look, we'll certainly add those, and then after that, we got another 30 days on these policies. So,
And to the
again,
public,
Did
they're
we
on
need
the
to pass
website.
that first read or not? No, we're good.
And Madam Chair, you're not adjourning.
Oh, that's right. I need a motion to go back into, we have recessed from closed session.
Yes, we need to do the motion to go back into closed session.
I need a motion to go back into closed session, sorry. A motion by Mr. Wooten, I need a second. I need a
Second.
second. Second by Ms. Anton. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? We will go back into closed session. Welcome back into open session. We appreciate your patience. Our action item for this time is to approve closed session minutes. I will ask for a motion to approve the May 9th, 2023 closed session minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tippett, second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now I ask for motion to accept the May 30th, 2023 closed session minutes.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Carroll, second by Mr. Johnston. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of the approval of the May 30th, 2023 closed session minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Now for approval of the June 5th, 2023 closed session minutes. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Tippett. Second by Mr. Carroll. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of approving the June 5th, 2023 closed session minutes, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. 7-0. Hearing no other business necessary for the board, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Motion by Mr. Wooten, second by Mr. Carroll. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. 7-0. Thank y'all so much. We are adjourned.